Welcome to the Susan Brender Show. It's all about you. Featuring shows on health and wellness, the performing arts, politics, and people who inspire you to be your very best. And now, here's Susan Brender.
I'm Susan Brender, and today my guest is Daniel Goodenough, and I'm so pleased to have him on the Susan Brender Show. He's the author of a recently released work of fiction called The Caravan of Remembering. It's a roadmap for experiencing the awakening of your life's mission, and I want to say welcome to Daniel. So, Daniel, you've been an author for how long?
Well, I've been doing this work of helping people remember why they're here and to step into it and embody it for many decades. Being an author is a newer thing. So while I've written 500-page courses, a book for the general public is relatively new.
Now, you also are a professional musician, research scientist, and a graphic designer. Wow, that's a lot of things. And which of these has been a passion for you?
Well, actually, the passion is helping people remember why they're here, remembering the why, the what, and the who. Why am I here? What does that call me to do? And who does that call me to become? The other pieces, the being a scientist, having a design studio, getting a fine arts degree, being a touring musician, those were all dreams that I had for myself personally that came about as a result of saying, well, if I'm going to talk to people about living their dreams, I probably should do that myself first. Mm-hmm. So those were earlier in life research projects around how do you step into a dream and how do you manifest it and make it happen. The question of why you're here, what that calls you to do, and who that calls you to become was always running in the background. So the full-time work for the last 3 decades is this work of in the U.S. and Canada and Mexico and hopefully Europe soon, talking to people about why are you here, what does that call you to do, and who would you become by doing it, and who do you need to be to step into it.
Okay, so you're teaching people how to do that. What about yourself? What is your dream, and what is your passion, and why? Can you express the why, the what, the who for Daniel Goodenough?
The why, the what, and the who for myself is that thing I'm doing now, which is why I'm here is to help people remember why they're here and step into the what and the who for them. So the what for me is this life mission work. And that there's a who I needed to be to step into it, and that maybe was what was required to do those earlier careers. And the who I'm becoming is the result of doing the what. There's the who is the inner life mission, and the what is the outer life mission. And what you do changes who you are, which changes what you do, which changes who you are, which changes what you do. So
people do
who
that
I'm becoming
easily,
is.
Daniel, I'm just curious. Can people do that easily? Because it sounds like a lot of work.
With my approach is to treat it like any other profession. Mm-hmm. In this case, it's getting clear about what your profession is, I suppose. But if you want to become a masterful musician, there are scales to do, and you do them every day. Pablo Casals did 3 hours of scales when he was in his 90s still. If you want to be an elite athlete, there are practices to do every day in your sport. So to know the why, what, and who, there are life mission scales you can do, and if you do them consistently, it doesn't have to be a great mystery.
Well,
you absolutely can.
Okay, now it sounds like you think it's a very easy thing, but how can you discover your unique life mission? Because I'm thinking about so many of the young people today who don't know. They graduate high school, they go straight to college. Some of them go for their master's and their PhD, and all that time they just keep on saying to themselves, what should I do now? What should I do now? And sometimes it's all about money, and sometimes it's all about power. So I would like you to use me as a sort of a person who you could practice on. So give me a little bit of your program so that the audience can know what you do.
So let's start with a comment about it sounds like you think it's an easy thing. It's not an easy thing to become an elite athlete or a professional musician. What it does require is practice. So, yes, absolutely every person, including a grade schooler, and I've worked with grade schoolers, high schoolers, and I think it's immensely important before you spend a couple $100,000 on a college or an advanced degree to get clear about your why. And everybody can get clear about your why, and it's a matter of doing the scales. So, using you as an example, I would say, when you say, I love this movie, what is it about this movie that makes you say that?
That's a good question. Well, for me, it is all about relating to the characters. I need to have characters that you can have empathy for, that you can feel something's wrong and they're going to take care of it. You know, many things in a movie turns me on, particularly when there is a very good drama and you're listening to the horrors of life, the happiness in life, all of those different things stick in my mind, and I love it. Now, how can you discover your unique life mission? We talked about. So let's talk.
We hold on just a second?
Sure.
So as the process, why you love movies and the things you mentioned are clues that I could say then, because it's not just one question. The question is, I actually have about 5,000 questions I ask, and it's the connection of the, let's say, meta level or constellation of the questions that help you clearly articulate the what. So you might say, what's the question at the center of your life?
Okay. All right. Give me a couple more.
So when you say, Rumi said, let the beauty you love be what you do. If you let the beauty you love be what you do, what would you be doing? You could say, when you say this, these are the things that light me up and give me energy. What are those things? When do you feel most alive? When do you feel best about yourself? What motivates you? If your life mission were a vehicle, what kind of vehicle would it be? What would you talk long into the night about? What would be a conversation you'd have to break into? Just have to, even though they were strangers. If you had 1 year to live, what would you be doing if you knew that? And if you had 300 years to live, what would you do?
Right.
If you had 15 minutes on the TED stage, on the world stage, what would you say to the world in your 15 minutes? So when you say I love anything, what is it about that? Your favorite toys when you're a child. Why did you love them? I could go on, but you get the idea, right?
I get the idea. And it's all about introspection is what it sounds like to me. It's really taking a chance and taking time to find out what you're all about. I think this is a great idea. Now, here's the thing again. I want to talk about kids because kids, oh my God, they're in a situation where nobody is giving them the inspiration or the stimulation to do something important. They kind of just go, as I said before, they just go to college and they go for a master's or a PhD and they don't know. They don't know. And so, again, put yourself in a classroom, Daniel. If you were talking to young people, what would you say to them?
I would say to them that everyone can know why they're here. And if you're willing to do the practice, which is what's required, if you're a young person and you're on a sports team or you're on the debate team, whatever it is you're doing as your extracurricular in school, there are practices that are being done to get skillful at that. So knowing why you're here is a matter of skill build. So I would say to them, first of all, you can know why you're here, and it's important that you do take the time, as you said, to discover that. So let's do that. Let's do the inquiry. I'm actually in talks with some people in Winnipeg for a pilot project of working with kids in trouble. To have this conversation on a regular basis. And it does, like skill building in anything, require a more than one-time shot of asking these questions, which is why I wrote the book. The book has 80-some scales embedded in the story, so you see a character doing the process, and that's for the general public, so it doesn't have to be me in the room doing it. And there's also a conversations club on the Internet for people around the world to do it with each other. So it's an ongoing process. So what I would say to young people is it's immensely important, and that actually the research shows that most kids knew at 7 and then got talked out of it. And the money question you mentioned earlier, there was a project done, a research project, with a graduating class of an MBA class of Harvard. They said, well, now are you going to go for the money or are you going to go for the meaning? Are you going to go for meaning first or are you going for money and then meaning later? There were, I forget how many people were in the class, but 20 years later when they came back and they asked it, they looked at, did you get the family you wanted? Did you get the money you wanted? All of these things.
Mm-hmm.
Out of that graduating class, there were 101 multimillionaires who had the family and the dreams they wanted. Only one of that 101 went for the money first.
Really?
100 of that 101 went for meaning first and then got them.
Yeah, but Daniel, let's take a look at what you just said. They started out, they got jobs or they started companies as entrepreneurs and they wanted money, okay? Now, years and years pass, but they have the money, you see. And
no, I'm saying only one of the 101 went for the money first. 100 of the 101 went for the meaning.
Yeah, but isn't that because they had the money? I mean,
no.
If they didn't have the money,
I mean, they probably graduated with a lot of student debt, actually.
Interesting. I want to tell you a story, Daniel. Just now, a little while ago, I was watching a documentary about Lady Gaga. And Lady Gaga, to say the least, is a multi-millionaire. And when they asked her, how does it feel to be rich and successful, how she answered was, the most important people in my life are my family, okay? My family. She said, now, I have also lots and lots of money, but the thing is, I also have problems. I have psychological, I have physical problems, and the thing is, what would you do if you didn't have the money? So there's sort of a conundrum here because so many people recognize the fact that, yeah, money doesn't make you happy necessarily, but it helps you get the things you want and need. See, that's the most important thing, the things you need. And so that's why there's a lot of jealousy all over the world. They think Americans, this is a place where there is gold in the streets. Now, let's look at that. If you were talking to an audience, let's say in Europe or in Asia or places like that, would you have the same conversation as you're having with me?
Yes, absolutely. So I just mentioned the graduating class because that was a research project that was talking about meaning first. So in my personal experience, early in my life, I did jobs as, a dishwasher in a Greek restaurant. I worked in a car wash. I worked in an exercise equipment building company. I did the early in life jobs.
Mm-hmm.
How I felt about those jobs. Touring with rock and roll bands that weren't making a lot of money. I toured with bands that did. But when I was touring with bands that didn't, when I started a design studio, at every stage of my life when I was beginning something new and wasn't making a ton of money, the thing that made that not just bearable but actually deeply meaningful was that I was clear about why I was doing it. So, the proverbial hot dog salesman,
Sure.
metaphor,
Sure.
that you could be a hot dog vendor with a cart in Central Park, and if you were clear that why you were doing that is you love talking to people and you were clear your life mission had to do with bringing that joy to people, then you would love that.
Of course.
People don't always feel like they have choice. However, what I do know is if you hold your attention on the intention to step into your why, the what and who, you're here, why am I here, what does that call me to do, and who will I need to do that? If you hold that, whatever it is you're doing will become more meaningful. Mm-hmm. And by the way, life mission isn't a job. Life mission is why you're here, which includes a family life mission and a community life mission and a spiritual life mission and, yes, career too.
Mm-hmm. Now, you talk about a number of words that I think we need to define. You talk about mindfulness, you talk about integrity, and the heart. Now, when you talk about each one of those, give me sort of your definition of them.
Well, those are words that are used by different people for different reasons. Mindfulness, I actually didn't say mindfulness. So if you were being mindful of your attention on your intention, and let's say your intention is to be present to, and mindfulness is about presence. So if you were present to the question, if you were living the question, and the power is more in the question than the answer, if you're living the question, why am I here, what does that call me to do, and who do I need to be to do it, and who will I become by doing it? If you continually ask your question, you will get an answer to that. So, and that will, and you bring your heart to it. So the head might have certain figuring it out ways of addressing that, and the heart has a sense of knowing. So if you bring the knowing of the heart, that might transcend the figuring it out of the mind, and you hold the question, that might be the mindfulness, mindfully hold your attention on that question. The brain is a question-answering machine. If you keep asking that question, eventually the brain will give you an answer to that.
Now, we're in a technological society right now, and it's going to evolve. Do you have any thoughts about how technology is an advantage or a disadvantage for the people? Because a lot of people, all they do is they message on the phone, they look up everything on the computer. It's like having a robot give you everything you need. Do you think that technology is a good thing for people to have, or would you like to see people back in time where they had a community, they got together, they did things together, and life seemed to be a little less nerve-wracking?
Well, again, it comes back to why are you here? So in terms of technology, are you spending your time or are you investing? And a lot of people, because they haven't engaged the question, what is the most meaningful thing to me? And it could be family, but and then after family, so that what? So the life mission piece is always the so that what? So family, so that what? Spirituality, so that what? What is that spirituality calling me to? So if you haven't engaged that question, the tendency will be to spend your time, whether it's on the internet on your cell phone or at home on your laptop or cable or satellite TV, whatever that is, you'll be more likely to be subject to distraction. If you're clear about your why and what is the so that what of your life, you'll be much more likely to invest your time. So that if you are on the internet, if you are nailed to your phone, so to speak, it will be more likely to be an investment in searching for the next piece for your why.
Yeah. What about faith? You talked about spirituality. What about faith? Does that have a place in the world that you would love to create?
Well, the first part of the question of life's mission is the why, what, and who. Then, of course, the second question would be how. How do I do that? Then there is this third question that the manner in which you do that might be as important as whether you do that. So that means when you get to the question of how do I step into my why, what, and who, the outer being the what am I called to do in the world, and who will I need? You see, faith and spirituality comes into it. But it's also, can I do it artfully and beautifully, sacredly and skillfully? The integration of art, science, and spirit, the science is how does it work? That's what science does. How does it work? So how do I do that skillfully? Spirituality is how do I do it sacredly?
Right.
So, so faith and spirituality, whatever that means to you, would come into how do I do it artfully, beautifully, sacredly, and skillfully. And that is as important in so many ways.
Yeah. What about meditation? All these different things that people are using for mindfulness to kind of create a situation where they could feel good. I mean, do you think meditation or say yoga plays a part in people's lives and should play a part in people's lives?
The benefit of the mindful practices, the benefit of any spirituality is it helps you, it reminds you of that question: what's the meaning? What's the why? The benefit of the practices, whether it's yoga or the other kinds of mindfulness practices, is first and foremost, it helps you get out of the monkey mind long enough to engage these questions with some kind of mindfulness. So those really challenged situations in life that you might mention, the family of origin issues, or maybe you're just in you're in one of those situations, whether the inner cities of America, or maybe you are in a disaster situation that we have so many of now. Maybe you're a refugee. One of the benefits of the practices is that whether it's the challenges from your childhood or the current events in your life, if you can drop through the emotion of that, if you can drop through the current, here's what my monkey mind will go on and circle and, oh my goodness, and oh what, all of that, which is all monkey mind stuff, then you can really drop into, okay, between me and the one who sent me, how am I being called to address what's going on right now?
Right.
And if you remember your life mission question, I know this is happening to me right now, and how is this syncing with my reason for being here? Is there something about this that can inform my reason for being here, whatever situation you find yourself in? And by the way,
excuse me for interrupting you.
Sure.
Do you have your book in front of you?
Yes.
Okay. Open it up.
Okay.
And is there any kind of statement at the beginning of the book that kind of sums it all up? Or is it at the end of the book? I don't want people to hear the end, but if you were to read a little section, tiny section for us, tell me, tell our audience what it's all about, because once they have an understanding of the book, then they'll understand all the things that you said to me.
Well, it's fiction. So the opening of the book is the character having a bad day and saying, what's the purpose of all of this? So, and actually the character's doing pretty good. And still, what's the purpose of all that? So the fiction of the book is this main character, David, working through it. And the book is, he's a designer in Chicago. I use my experience as a designer in Chicago to say he's having a successful career, but that's not really doing it for him. And so he hears this call. So that starts with, all I remembered was the voice, calling from somewhere they didn't at first have aware, like hearing the voice of someone you know yet can't place. It was the voice of someone I'd known for eternity and yet forgotten, except I remembered. It was the voice of someone I sensed was actually eternal, though I couldn't tell you how or why I knew this. And it goes on to, like, this voice is calling him to a place on the inner planes, or let's say virtual worlds, however you want to see that, where everyone on the planet goes to work on this question of life mission.
Right.
And so you have him doing the process. So in terms of myself, in the introduction, I say as a child, I imagined the possibility of a world that honored the importance of everyone's reason for being on Earth. I imagined a world where one's individual calling is nurtured, a world that helped each of us remember, cultivate, and unfold this call of the soul throughout our lives. I imagined this imagined world has informed my life and inspired the search for an architecture of remembering.
Oh, it's wonderful. Today, my guest is Daniel Goodenough, and he's the author of the recently released work of fiction called The Caravan of Remembering. And boy, if you want to know how he thinks about life and why he puts all these questions to you, the who, the what, the when, you'll understand when you read his book. It's kind of sounds like, Daniel, you can really say it's you in the book. Am I right?
Well, sure. I used elements from my life, as all authors do, and it is fiction, and it is passion for the why, what, and who, and the remembering. Why are you here? And then actually embedding in this story, and at the end of the book, those scales or those questions and exercises are delineated again, along with it says, okay, here's where this character was. This is what page this person was working through this. So you have an example of somebody doing it, and you have the questions and exercises that hopefully you'll do on a regular basis, like so you can become skillful at this thing called living your reason for being.
Wow. Well, again, I want to say thank you to Daniel Goodenough for being on the Susan Brender Show. He's a very inspirational guy, and he's got a great book out there. And Daniel, if they want to buy the book or if they want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Well, the book's available through Amazon, and so that means Kindle. Also, the other ebook versions of iTunes, Kobo, Barnes & Noble, Nook. You could go to Heart's Way Press and buy the book there, or thewayoftheheart.com.
That's great. What's up in store for you? Is there anything coming around the turn, if you will? Are you doing another book or teaching classes around the world? What's up?
So I do, on a consistent basis, through the Way of the Heart, teach classes in the U.S. and Canada and Mexico. This particular book was the first part of life's mission, being the why, what, and who. The next book out will be about the how. And I've just started working with corporations to talk to them about a different way of doing business from that place of the why, what, and who.
Today my guest again is Daniel Goodenough, and I want to thank you again for being on the Susan Brender Show. It was a delight, a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Susan Brender Show. To be a guest, email sebrender@yahoo.com.